At Christmas, my niece pointed at my son and said, "Grandma says you're the maid's kid." My name is Stacy, 34, and Eli is 9. My mother chuckled. My sister Rachel smirked. My father kept eating, as if the words were crumbs to sweep away. I took Eli's hand, left without a word, and that night I texted my parents one line: "You'll get what you deserve." Because that was the moment I stopped keeping their secrets. The porch light hummed, snow fell heavy, and Eli's palm was shaking in mine. He looked up. "Did I do something wrong?" "Not even close," I whispered. Behind us, laughter kept going, like nothing had happened. Have you ever realized family fairness is just another way to keep you small? If this story touches something in you, hit like and subscribe for more quiet stories of strength and peace. The drive that night was almost silent, except for the wipers scraping over the windshield and the hum of snow under the tires. Eli sat curled up in the back seat, clutching his backpack like it was the only thing holding him steady. Every mile that took us farther from that house felt like oxygen returning to my chest. I didn't cry. I was past that. I just drove, eyes locked on the falling snow, hands gripping the wheel hard enough to leave marks. Halfway through the trip, Eli whispered, "Grandma didn't mean it, right?" His voice was so small I could barely hear him. "Not the one we're going to see," I said softly. He nodded. Brave. Too brave for 9. Kids shouldn't have to learn what betrayal sounds like in their own family's laughter. When we finally pulled into Grandma June's driveway, her porch light was still on. The snow had piled up around the steps. Frank opened the door before I could even knock, wearing flannel pajamas and holding a half-eaten gingerbread man. He blinked once, then shouted over his shoulder, "June, we've got a situation." She came running, barefoot on cold tile, gray hair loose, eyes sharp as ever. The moment she saw my face, she didn't ask a single question. She just wrapped me up in her arms and told Frank to take Eli to the kitchen for cocoa and extra marshmallows. I broke then. No words, just tears I hadn't let out in years. Grandma didn't rush me. She just stood there, one hand on my back, waiting like she'd done when I was little and scraped my knees. When I finally told her everything, the dinner, the laughter, the way Mom looked at Rachel like it was their secret joke, she went quiet. Not shocked, just angry, in that quiet, heavy way only strong women get when they've seen too much. Then she disappeared down the hall. I thought she was grabbing tissues or maybe old photos to cheer me up. Instead, she came back holding a thick white envelope. She dropped it on the coffee table. "That's yours," she said. I frowned. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a deed, a 2-bedroom condo 10 minutes from Eli's school, paid off. A sticky note clung to the last page. "You've earned this 100 times over." I stared at her, unable to breathe. Grandma smiled faintly. "You've carried them long enough, honey. Time to put the weight down." Something cracked open inside me, something I hadn't realized was still holding on. That night, while Eli slept in a bed that smelled like cinnamon and safety, I sat in the living room watching the fire and thinking about every time I'd said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. Every time I'd paid their bills instead of buying new shoes for my kid. Every time I'd convinced myself loyalty mattered more than peace. Love, I realized, isn't proved by what you endure. It's proved by who still stands beside you when everyone else laughs. And for the first time in years, we were standing somewhere safe. Morning came soft and gray. The smell of coffee drifted through Grandma June's kitchen, mixing with the sound of Frank humming off-key somewhere down the hall. Eli sat at the table, building a Lego tower with marshmallows for walls. For the first time in months, he looked like a kid again. No tension in his shoulders, no quiet glances to check my mood before speaking. I was still trying to catch my breath from the night before when my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Dad, make sure you send the utility payment tomorrow." Not "Are you okay?" Not "Where did you go?" Just business as usual. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "You'll get what you deserve." Then I turned off the phone. Grandma glanced at me, reading my silence the way only she could. "Still trying to rent space in your head, huh?" "Always," I said. She nodded, poured another cup of coffee, and said nothing more. Later that morning, I told her everything I'd been too embarrassed to admit before. How they'd borrowed just until next month. How I'd covered overdrafts so they wouldn't lose the country club membership they didn't even use. how Mom once guilted me into paying Rachel's car note because family helps family. Every word felt like sandpaper on my tongue. When I finished, Grandma was quiet. Then she said, "They trained you to confuse generosity with obedience." Her words landed hard. She was right. I'd spent years mistaking servitude for love, thinking if I gave enough, they'd finally see me as part of them instead of the shadow that reminded them of loss. Frank came in from the porch, still in his boots, holding a newspaper. "You two look like you're plotting something," he teased. Grandma smiled. "We are freedom." Eli looked up, curious. "What's freedom?" Grandma crouched beside him. "It's when you stop asking people who hurt you to love you right." That night, I found the envelope again and ran my fingers over the key taped to the back. I could almost feel my heart slowing down, learning what calm really felt like. For years, I'd lived like a guest in my own life, always waiting for approval, for permission to breathe. Now, sitting there with the fire popping in the next room, I realized something simple but terrifying. I wasn't just leaving my parents' house that night. I was leaving the version of myself they created. The quiet provider, the family scapegoat, the reliable fool. And the truth was, she wasn't coming back. By the next morning, the storm outside had eased, but the one inside my phone was just beginning. The first text came from Rachel. No greeting, no apology. Just, "Did you say something to Grandma? The bank just declined my card." I didn't answer. I just sat at Grandma's kitchen table, sipping coffee while Eli built another Lego city on the rug. The house was warm. The kind of warmth that didn't come from the thermostat. An hour later, Mom's voice filled my voicemail. "Stacy, this is serious. Your father just got a call from the mortgage company. What did you do?" Her tone was sharp, controlled panic, like someone who'd realized the ground beneath her was moving but couldn't admit it. Grandma was reading the paper when I told her. She just smirked. Took them long enough to notice. I closed every account this morning. My mouth fell open. "All of them?" She nodded. "The ones with my name on them, yes. They drained the trust I set up after your grandpa died. Called it a healing trip to Turks and Caicos. Healing from what? Laziness?" I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. It felt like exhaling poison. By noon, my phone was a storm of missed calls and messages. Rachel's number lit up 23 times. One text said, "You can't do this to us. This isn't who you are." 5 minutes later came another. "You're just bitter because your life didn't turn out the way you wanted." That one hurt, because part of it was true. My life hadn't turned out the way I planned. I didn't plan on being a widow at 31, raising a child alone in a one-bedroom apartment while my family treated me like a charity case. But I had built something honest, even if it wasn't perfect. Grandma poured me another cup of coffee and said, "Don't answer them. Let the silence do the talking." By evening, Dad sent a photo of stacked bills, phone, water, gas, with a message. "Your mother is crying. Hope that makes you happy." I stared at it for a long time, the way you look at something you used to fear but no longer do. Then I wrote back, "You had 9 years to treat us like family. Now live like we never existed." When I hit send, something inside me clicked. It wasn't triumph. It was release. For years, I thought love meant endurance, that if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd change. But what I learned in that moment was simpler and sharper. Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's the only weapon you have left. That night, Grandma made steak for dinner. Frank opened a bottle of wine. Eli fell asleep on the couch with the dog at his feet and the fire humming low. I watched the flames and realized the truth I'd avoided for years. I hadn't lost a family. I'd just stopped paying the rent for one that never existed. I thought the storm had passed. I was wrong. A week later, a plain envelope slid under my apartment door. No return address, no signature. Inside was a single sheet of paper typed in bold. "You think this is over? Blood is blood. You're making enemies in your own family." For a moment, my chest tightened. Then I took a deep breath, tore it in half, and dropped it into the trash. Fear used to control me. Now it just annoyed me. When I showed it to Grandma, she poured herself a glass of wine. "Good," she said calmly. "Let them hate you from a distance." Then she looked at me with that sharp, knowing stare. "You ready for what comes next?" I nodded. Yes. The next morning, a white sedan parked across the street and sat there for hours. I knew it wasn't random. Grandma didn't panic. She called Frank. 10 minutes later, I looked out again and saw him standing by the driver's window, one hand resting on the roof, talking low and firm. The car pulled away and never came back. After that, I opened the file box Grandma had given me, the one I hadn't finished sorting through. Inside were documents I didn't expect: tax returns, wire transfers, old credit statements, and then I saw it, papers with my name on them. Apparently, after my husband died, my parents had claimed me as a dependent on their taxes for 3 years straight. I had no idea. I'd been working full-time, paying my own rent, raising a child, but they used me for their refunds. And it didn't stop there. A credit card from 2011, maxed out and unpaid, also in my name. $7,000 of debt I'd never seen. I sat there staring at the papers until my vision blurred. Then I picked up the phone. "Grandma," I said quietly, "I think it's time." She didn't ask what I meant. She just gave me a number. A woman from her church, an attorney with a soft voice and a memory like steel. We met the next day in her small office that smelled like lemon polish and quiet resolve. I laid everything out: forged signatures, unauthorized accounts, the credit theft. She listened without a word, then said, "We start small. Letters, reports, paperwork. No noise, just truth." So we did. Identity theft claims, IRS alerts, formal notices. Every document a quiet brick in the wall between me and them. Weeks later, Rachel's husband called. His voice was cracked and tired. He begged me to stop whatever I was doing, said Rachel was drinking again, that my parents were panicking, that everything was falling apart. I told him the truth. I'm not doing anything to them. I'm just not protecting them anymore. When I hung up, I felt nothing but stillness, the kind that doesn't come from revenge, but from knowing the fire can finally burn out because you've stopped feeding it. 3 days later, everything collapsed, quietly, just like it began. Rachel was arrested first. Fraud, falsified tuition documents, state-funded scholarship misuse. Her mugshot hit a local news blog before I even heard from Grandma. One by one, the lies they built started to cave in. My parents tried to fight back. Their lawyer filed a lawsuit against me, claiming I owed them for years of support and emotional labor. But the moment Rachel's arrest went public, their case vanished. My attorney got a one-line email: "We're choosing not to pursue this matter at this time." It wasn't justice that satisfied me. It was the silence that followed. No more texts, no more guilt, just space. Grandma called a family meeting, not for drama, for closure. Only a handful showed up. She stood in the living room, holding her wedding ring in one hand and her will in the other. "Every dime I have goes to Stacy and Eli," she said simply. "The rest of you chose where you stood. If silence was your choice, then silence is what you'll get in return." No one argued. No one even looked surprised. That night, I drove back to the small condo she'd given me. Eli fell asleep in the passenger seat, his face calm in the glow of passing headlights. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I was heading toward peace. Later, at the cabin in Colorado, snow dusted the trees like powdered sugar. Eli built a snow fort while Frank hammered together a swing. Grandma read a book by the fire, glasses sliding down her nose. I watched them and realized this was it. Not revenge, not victory, just a life that finally belonged to me. Some people lose everything to find peace. I only had to lose the people who pretended to love me. Have you ever had to choose peace over approval? If this story touches something in you, hit like and subscribe for more quiet stories of strength and peace.